good. So it's just after 10 o'clock, so we're going to get started. And in the room, we've got Mercer, Iron River, Webster, Shell Lake, Hayward, Spooner, Sainer, Boulder Junction, Land O'Lakes, Cable, the joint library of yada, yada, yada. Bayfield and Ashland represented, and I know we have about 5 or 6 of you online, so we do have more than a quorum. So we're going to go ahead and get started. Are there any proxies that we should recognize? Okay, no proxies, then we'll go ahead to approval of the May 9th consortium meeting minutes, and you were emailed a draft copy of those from Sarah. Anybody have any comments or corrections to those minutes?
Was I listed as attending? Yeah, I attended online, and I thought after again to double check, but.
Yeah, from a secretary standpoint, it'd be great if we had a formal role. Or we can do these corrections every time, that's fine as well.
We could certainly do that.
But I can update you, Carrie, to online.
Do you want us to go back, Sarah, and do a formal roll call?
Well, I can wing it this time, but maybe for the future, it would be great to have a formal roll
That's
call.
easy to do, so that's not a problem. Okay, any other questions or comments about those minutes? If not, I would accept a motion to approve them with that correction. Motion from Christine, is there a second? Second from Angie from Spooner. All in favor, say aye, say or type aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say or type nay.
All eyes online.
Motion carries. All right, presentation of financial reports. Michelle, take it away.
Thank you. Financial statement is for the as of July 31st, 2019. Not much has changed. We did receive, now we have received everybody's payment for all the Merlin items that you billed for earlier in the year. And as I pointed out before, where you see the check mark for the balance of each bank account, that is reflecting the fact that I've made sure to include any activity that would change that account number balance and actually balance it to the books, balance it to the account, I think. So those are the amounts of money that are in each account right now. And just a little learning piece, little tidbit in the general fund, line 5, consortium operations, and line 9, consortium operations, 1 in income and 1 in expenses. That number doesn't carry over because it doesn't affect the bank account. So I keep it over in bold to the left there in the middle. And what that is showing is just money that's going in and out. When you purchase something, you let us know that you're getting a computer or receipt paper or something like that. And then it's expensed out and you pay for that. The reason that the income is higher than expenditures is because you may be buying something that we purchased the previous year. So we have inventory of receipt paper or something like that. So those numbers don't necessarily match, but anything that we're buying that is for you is expensed out to you when you purchase it. So that's just a little. That's it.
All right. Anyone have any questions or comments like that? If not, I would accept a motion to accept the financial statement.
Make a motion.
Motion from Shell Lake. Is there a second? Second from Phelps. Any further discussion? All in favor say or type aye. Any opposed say or type nay.
All eyes online.
All right, motion carries. Okay. Okay, reports from members and Northern Water staff. So, Jean had asked me to put an update from Lac de Flambeau on the agenda, but she didn't make it this morning. Jackie or anyone else, do you want to share with us how their progress is going on Merlin?
Sure. So we went live with Lac de Flambeau at the end of June. We had a nice, article in a couple of papers talking about it. I think it's going well. They're learning all the circulation stuff now as they go along. So if you notice anything wonky, let us know. They're, very willing and excited to learn. Yeah, so, and also if you feel like if you're in their neck of the woods and you want to stop in and visit and be encouraging, that'd be great too.
All righty. Well, go right on ahead with your updates
Okay,
then.
sure.
You're next.
Okay, so the ILS Audit Committee, we formed a small committee after the last meeting here, and we've met online 2 times. And we started going through item records and looking at each field there. And now we've moved on to patron records, and we'll meet again early in September and talk about more about patron records and then move on to bid records. And when we're done, we'll kind of come up with our recommendations of how we can improve and what efficiencies we'd like to see change. Anyone have any questions about that? Super exciting.
The meetings are last minute. You should all join in.
Okay. So next is Content Cafe. So like we talked about at the last meeting, you can see in the Merlin catalog that book covers, book jackets look wonderful. Anything that's an AV item that doesn't use an ISBN necessarily, but uses a UPC or something like that, is not working. And so what we've discovered in talking with our sales rep at Innovative and the support people at Innovative is that we need to buy an additional product to make the AV items work. So Michelle and I had lots of really great conversations with Innovative, and what they've decided they can offer us is to allow us to purchase that product at cost for them, which ends up being $3,500 a year, and in addition to Content Cafe, which is what, about 700, maybe 6, 7, something like that. So that's why they're not working. That's the story. It's really up to you guys to decide if you want to pursue that. I don't know if you have an opinion on how.
Well, we're grateful that they would offer to us at cost, since it was, we feel, an error that it was not mentioned to us that another product would need to be purchased to make all of those setups work. And however, I remember Jackie asking the question during the meeting, what if can we just turn this off and go back to the way it was? So that was an option as well.
Yeah.
If you decide not to go forward, because Content Cafe was already $600, and they were not willing to refund that. Even though we argued heavily that would be a really good idea, because we're not using it the way we thought it was going to function. So another option is, I think, to shut it down, go back to.
Yeah, so the subscription for Content Cafe goes, I think, through the end of June of 2020. So we can leave it as it is until 2020, and then we just have another discussion. We can turn it off right now, and we're out $600, or we can look at purchasing this additional product called Pathfinder Pro. And they did say, I think because they realized there was an error on their side, that they would give it to us at cost in perpetuity, like forever and ever.
I have that.
Yeah. So I guess we just need to hear from you guys what you would like to see happen.
If we were to go forward with that purchase, that additional $3,500, would they be willing to waive the $600 going forward to kind of help us balance out the cost of what we didn't get for the first.
I don't
Whatever.
think so, because it's two separate products.
It's a really good idea, though.
Yeah.
I'll call you next time.
Content Cafe is a product from Baker and Taylor, isn't that
Yes.
right? So
Yes.
that $600 or $700 was actually paid to Baker and Taylor.
Yeah.
However, I remember our discussion about it when we decided to do this, and all our amazement saying, "Now you're sure it's only $600?"
And I promise
There's
I
not gonna
did
be-
ask.
Oh no,
our
I'm not
sales
questioning you.
I did.
Our experience with Innovative is playing out, basically, is what I'm
Yeah.
saying. But I think that's the other reason why they may not be willing or able to do that, is it's Baker and Taylor's product that we paid the $600 for. So.
And at this point, I think they're feeling that their loss is that they're willing to give the $3,500 product to us at cost.
Mhm.
So,
What do they normally charge?
It's $7,000 a year for Pathfinder Pro. So they're giving it at their cost, half price.
So let's save $3,500 into perpetuity.
Yeah, and in perpetuity, right? I'm not trying to sway you one way or the other, but my feeling is that if we're gonna invest $3,500 in something, I would much rather see it go to something besides cover images, to be honest. But that's my opinion.
At this point in time, is there any other products on the market that are comparable?
I haven't done any hunting, no, but I can, if you'd like.
And the other way we were doing this in the past, just to remind everybody, was by basically borrowing images from Amazon's database. So that wasn't costing us anything. It just involved some coding gymnastics in the Innovative system.
And the coding is all still there. All I have to do is click a button and turn Content Cafe off, turn Amazon back on.
Didn't we talk about not doing it because of like, not copyright issues or something? There was a reason why we originally changed it. Wasn't it because of copyright or something? Like maybe it wasn't legal to use the Amazon? It was questionable, is that why we stopped?
I vaguely recall that too.
I think that was part of the discussion, but also it wasn't very complete. It was just a lot of images, a lot of items didn't have cover images either, because there's no good way for us to accurately match every single item in our catalog to Amazon's. And of course, they're not going to provide help to do that because we're not paying them for that service. But I think you're right, we did talk about that as a factor.
So we have options, like leave it as it is until next June, turn it off, turn off Content Cafe, purchase Pathfinder Pro, like Chris suggested, hunt for other,
The Baker and Taylor have something else since the Content Cafe is coming out?
yeah, I don't know. I'd have to do some research, and I'm happy to do that.
Don't you think Amazon would protect themselves though, and not let us do that, or somehow wouldn't we know if it was illegal to do that from Amazon?
Noticed lately that some of the images that have been available from Amazon and Google have been much higher resolution, so I think this is actually a marketing play for them. And I think they're just using, power of people just flagrantly taking from the internet to their favor. So I don't know that Amazon is really feeling like they need to be protecting all of their copyrighted material.
Do we consider this part of our marketing, like what our goal is to encourage people to check out more things because they see the image? And, I feel like in my world, I'm always pushing books, and the media stuff goes regardless of how I market it, it just goes anyway. So, it might be nice to think about if we want to spend money on marketing our items, we want to put the lion's share of our money towards things that really need boosts rather than things that are going to go anyway.
I think that we should keep Content Cafe, just see if Baker and Taylor has an option for the AV stuff, but not go back to the old way until we've used it for $600.
We're gonna get our every penny out of that.
If you stick with the Content Cafe, does that mean we're still gonna get those little boxes with the X's in them?
Yeah. But there's no image available?
But we would work at Amazon sometimes anyway.
Yeah.
At least we got our books covered.
Yeah, I think the AV items right now constitute about 12% of our entire collection. So you can think of it that way, 12% of our items don't have images available.
Sherry, do we have any input coming in online from people about this?
Nope.
Okay, just wanted to check. So Angie has suggested we just stick with what we've got now, which is Content Cafe images for mostly our print materials, and live with it for a while and see what other options we have.
And I'll ask Baker and Taylor.
Unless anybody wants to make a motion to spend that $3,500 on this other product, I don't think we need to vote to maintain status quo, but if anybody wants to make a change that costs money, we could vote on that too. I'm not hearing anybody jumping up to offer their $3,500. All right, that's good. Other updates, I'm just gonna jump back a little bit because Jean came in, Jean from Dr. Flambeau, and Jean, we're already down to 5B on our agenda, but if you wanted to add, Jackie basically just filled us in on the fact that you guys had gone live on Merlin at the end of June and that things were going pretty well so far, and if you want to share any more details, you can certainly do that.
This is my new worker, Candace. Candy Wilson. She was on contract until yesterday, and then we went through the interview process, and she'll be a regular employee. But mainly her and Tanya are entering. I'll do it so I know what I'm doing when somebody comes in once in a while, but it's going good. Keeping up with the daily operations. And then there only being 2 computers, it's a slow process. But we're gonna have to get some training when we get to the DVDs. We haven't been able to enter that. And Jackie's gonna show us later, walk us through the process of somebody checking out an ebook. Yeah, we got, there's people that come in that are, I don't know how to describe it, but like the other day, we put a dot on the corner of the barcode to indicate that they're entered. Well, a lady came in with 3 books that were not dotted. She spent a lot of time looking for them, you know. And then we have people coming in there that just try to find something wrong with the system or something we don't know, but we're able to take care of that. We just call Jackie. Yeah. It's going. The other day we had a lady from Madeline Island. Are you here?
No.
No. Call and say, can you send us your 3 books of A Gentleman in Moscow? And I know that I only bought 1. So somebody entered it 3 times and we only had 1, so I called them and corrected that. But there are some mistakes that we're finding. And then I called Jackie about when we're almost done with taking books out of Wiscat that we discarded because they're so old. But then we'll find books that are in both Wiscat and Sierra. And we haven't been checking that. And once we get done with entering everything and have time, there's a lot of things we gotta backtrack on and take care of, like putting covers on, the protective covers on the book. But yeah, it's going, it's exciting. We must have put out, I would say close to 100 cards. And we still have people with the news article, and I suppose I should keep putting it in the e-newsletter, weekly e-newsletter. We still have people coming in not knowing that we're on, that we are on Sierra. So that's a report on that.
All right, good, thank you. All right, Jackie, what else you got?
Just one other question that I have for you. Tony and I have been talking about user licenses for Sierra. And I know I've talked to some of you when I've been out at your libraries, but I just wanted to hear from anyone if it's been a problem, like when you haven't had enough or you wanted more. We have 74 right now that we pay for. And I'm just wondering if we need to increase that number at all, and what your feelings are about it.
We'd love to have another one.
Yeah, one more.
Never get on.
Yes, especially in.
Yes, yes, one more would be nice.
Just one more. And what about you, Chris?
I believe we had this conversation before. Shell Lake has 2 licenses or 3. Because we have two desks up front, and then we have a cataloger has a license.
And you, like, 3 would be ideal?
3 would be ideal,
Okay.
particularly when we get busy this time of year, because
Yeah.
I'm both desks busy and I have to try to process books at the same time. If you get there very.
And same with that same, we have 2.
Yeah.
And it would be nice to have one more.
One more.
So the front helps.
Are you talking charges though? I mean.
Yeah.
Yeah, it costs money, obviously, yeah.
So if each individual library wants another license, is gonna get charged for that license or?
I don't know.
That's not how we had been doing it in recent years, so it used to be that way. We'd pay, our Merlin fee was based on how many licenses we had. And then we dropped that paying method, paying scheme, I don't know, my words are coming out. But anyway, we stopped doing that. But there would be a cost to the whole consortium to add more simultaneous licenses. So, and Jackie, you said you'd gotten some prices on that, or you don't have them yet?
It's $1,200 a license.
$1,200 per license.
Did I say that? Sounds right to me.
And we're using those 74 right now?
But yeah. Do you want to say anything?
So yeah, it seems like we'll get phone calls, that somebody can't log in. There's not enough available licenses. Jackie opened up a ticket with Innovative and they basically said the same thing, like, oh, you get your license limit. So, I guess you guys would know more than I would who's can't get in. Obviously, if you're trying to log in and there's no available licenses.
So we did purchase enough licenses to cover all of the ones that each of us think we have?
No, so if you add up the total number of assigned licenses that we have, it's over 100.
And then what did we purchase?
74.
Because few of us are using all of our licenses all of the time.
Yeah.
So,
So we've just kind of been
Like-
playing fast and loose with that
Yeah.
number for quite a while. So I'm just wondering if we're at the point where we need to say, let's buy more.
Is everybody paying for our licenses?
no.
So we have 5, we use 5.
Yeah.
And we definitely paid for our 5th one when we added it.
So are you saying that sometimes when we have 5, but say there's 4 of us using it, but everybody else uses it, we might not get our 5th?
Right, my understanding is that each library has a limit of simultaneous logins that their
Right.
library can do, but then there's an overall limit that is smaller than the sum total. But if we added 30 more licenses or whatever it would be to meet that total, that's another like $40,000 or
Okay.
$50,000 a year that we've been living without, okay. But if we're running into regular problems where there aren't enough licenses available, we'd have to add more overall licenses.
I mean, maybe we just add like five more or 10 more or something as an idea. And then they're not assigned.
I know.
You know, they're just available in a pool.
Is that $1,200 per license, is that an annual cost? Yeah.
And there's no bulk discounts.
Can't
we just go to Costco and?
I'd like a big box of licenses.
It isn't anything we need to decide like today, but I just wanted to put the discussion out there, like, what does it look like for everybody on your end? Because we just get the phone calls and, but maybe you're having trouble and you just don't hear about it. You just think, oh, we're over our, we're at our 2 or 3 or whatever.
So that $12,000 broken up between all the libraries that we're talking about.
Well, I mean, so to answer Angie's comment earlier, when you added a license, you probably did pay for it. Because once upon a time, our Merlin fees were based on how many licenses we had. And the reason we stopped doing that is that libraries were starting to manipulate how much they paid for Merlin by cutting back on the number of licenses they had. But that didn't really affect how much Merlin as a whole costs, because the license fee is a small portion of our overall fees. So we stopped doing that and we started with this current formula that's based on circulation and collection size instead. So if you added a license now, the question is then how do we address that in terms of cost? So I'm perfectly fine with my 2 licenses because I only have 2 employees that know how to get into Merlin anyway. So for me, it works out great. Do I want to pay for other people's extra licenses? I'm not a stickler. I think we should all share in costs. But at the same time, if you want to add 10 licenses for your library, how do we share that cost in an equitable way? So it's a question we'd have to address if we want to add some licenses. Now, I'm fine right now. If we're talking about adding 5 licenses, spreading it into the formula, that's fine. It's not a huge amount of money for anybody. But it's not zero money either. So if you talk about adding 5 licenses at $1,200, that's $6,000. And if you look at the costs of, like adding Shout Bomb costs $9,000. So, 2/3 of what the budget difference for Shout Bomb is what it would cost to add $6,000. Right? I'm ballparking that okay?
Sue says, need cost estimates. If it's 5 more licenses at 20% formula payment, that's another $1,200 for Superior's payment.
Well, whenever you say it's a problem, oftentimes, how big a problem is it? Are you dead in the water, you can't do anything? Or,
When we've run into it this summer, I didn't realize that. I scrambled around to all the computers and see who left Sierra up. And then somehow we can't figure it out, and then a few minutes later we can get into it. So I don't know if someone else logged. So, but otherwise we get a shutdown. Pardon?
Is that what gauge your 5 or going past 5?
With our 5, it's like we have 4 up and someone tries to turn on. And it didn't work, so we scrambled to see if there's an employee that, had their computer up and if they had Sierra up. And they did it, and then somehow it resolves itself out within 15 minutes. But we were wondering, because we don't see the 5th Sierra up, but somehow.
We've never gotten beyond 5.
5, no.
I'm always the 6th one trying to get on, and
we never get on beyond 5.
And
But we're trying sometimes to put the 5th one up and we can't get it.
Do we have any idea of how often we are hitting that 74 license limit or whatever it is? Like, is there any way to know?
So I've kind of spot checked at different times of the day. Like I can see what users are logged in at certain times of the day. And obviously from noon to 3, noon to 5 is when all of them are pretty much always used. Like early in the morning, it might be 40, some of them. But once they're all used, and it's every day, they're all used all the time at some point. Yeah.
So maybe we can just be more aware as a group if we have Sierra running and we know we're not using it or we want to wait, that we can turn it off and not have it running, I guess, if we're not sitting there using it. I know it's a
It's a low-tech solution, but it doesn't actually cost us anything to allow each library to log in more times, right? Like if I just go and bump Hayward up to 10, their limit being 10, that doesn't cost us a thing, except that then if they could, in theory, use more of the whole system's resources.
Yeah.
So if there are libraries that are regularly hitting their limit, you could still increase their ability to log in if we wanted to, without increasing the overall. But it just could be more of a problem hitting that overall limit.
we want to just revisit this.
Yeah, I guess from my perspective, I just kind of like you to be all be aware and be thinking of like.
We were
how's this
never
working?
aware that,
Mhm.
I never knew that, there was we need 100, but there's only 74 or whatever it is. So that's, yeah, I think, and we.
I mean, I
probably-
guess the only reason I'm glad we're talking about this now is that the potential budget implications, because, you know, the libraries that are paying a bigger share of Merlin, it is, you know, not insignificant chunk of
right,
money, as Sue
exactly.
pointed out, so. If we want to add it in the middle of the year, then we always scramble to say, well, where's that money gonna come from in the middle of the year?
And our amount of money that we pay to Merlin every year has nothing to do with how many licenses we have.
Yes, it does.
It does.
Our overall Merlin cost would increase if we increased the number of
Well, I
overall
mean, like,
licenses.
Where's
But
that
you as
right
an
at this moment?
individual, in our funding formula, how many licenses you as Spooner has no effect on how much you pay for Merlin. Your Merlin
So when
costs
we
are only
paid more that
calculated.
Year it didn't carry over.
No, but it went into the general Merlin pot to pay for the whole system at that time.
I remember, like, I feel like we paid the full amount though.
We paid for an extra.
Yeah, you probably did.
It was
One
one
time.
time. Included in our room.
Yeah, it was
One
like
time.
12,
Yeah.
one time, not carried over.
Oh, I see. So it was a one-time to cover the current budget year's extra license, and then in the future year, that cost was rolled into the overall system. I see.
I have two comments, one from Sue. She says in Superior, we don't allow staff to have Sierra up unless it's CERC or they are actively working on it. And then Josh from Wisconsin Valley, who's listening online. In Wisconsin Valley, they don't have any sublimits with their member libraries. It's just a pool for the whole consortium.
Which, to be honest, the way we're running our funding formula right now makes more sense. The libraries that are more busy in terms of circulation and collection size and have more staff pay more for Merlin already. So it may make the most sense to just do that. However, we're probably gonna run up into our 74 limit much more frequently if we do that. Especially if it's already happening every day.
Does Josh say how many licenses they have?
Yes. Well, he says we just have the single 143 license pool.
So 143. Yeah, and I remember from IFLIS, the pool there was like 189 or 200 licenses, but they do it the same way. No libraries assigned a certain number. It's just to be cool, we all use it. Something to think about, just a discussion. And I know we have a lot more to cover, so you don't have to belabor it.
But at least we can all be aware of it.
Yeah.
Which,
All right. Other reports. I gotta welcome back Tony to Northern Waters. Do you have any reports for us, Tony, from the IT department?
Merlin based, I do not really.
Okay.
Unless Josh is hearing something I should be seeing.
Nope, I don't think so.
But we'll be doing tech in director's afternoon.
Yep.
So,
Any other Northern Water staff reports?
I have one.
Yeah.
We're having a free giveaway right now of desks and bookshelves. And I was able to put everything in the middle of the room. And as a result of our new carpeting, if you take a look around, since we saw you last, we have moved every piece of furniture in this building from here to there and there to here and here to there and there to here and back and forth. And maybe over Labor Day, we'll be doing a delivery area that's gonna be tile instead of carpet. So we're still in the process, but as we put things back, we went, wow, why was this hiding in the back somewhere? And so that desk right there comes with a free rat. Easy.
Oh, you have to take the desk to get it.
Tony's old desk. And there's a very large double bookshelf behind those two free, where it says free book area. That really tall 8-foot one. It's got bookshelves on both sides.
the
So
giveaway one?
a giveaway, for giving away. Yeah, it says free on the end. So that bookshelf and all of these beautiful brand new desks right here and 2 chairs are available, if you want to let me know that you're interested, and I will gladly work with you to get them out the door. That, offer will end by September 15th. And at that point, I will probably donate them to who knows, somewhere I haven't thought of yet. But the metal ones especially are in really good condition. It's metal. So if you have a need, please let me know. This was Marcia's desk right here, and so it's got this side piece that attaches. Lots of space there for surface area. Yeah. That's my okay. All right. Well, let's go on to business, Lucky Day collections. So we talked about this last time. A small group of us got together and talked about it again online just the other day. And we drafted a policy, which sounds really nice, like we did a lot of hard work, but basically we just stole this, I think, from IFLS. And it was great. We did make a couple of modifications to it. So the discussion during that ad hoc committee meeting was essentially, almost all of us said, I'm not sure if I'm going to do this, but I also don't feel the need to restrict anyone else from giving it a shot. So the idea was draft a policy that will let people do it and see how it goes. And so just a couple of notes on some of the restrictions in this. Now, this is recommended policy. You guys are free to make changes to it now or vote it down completely, whatever you want to do. But I always think it's easier to start with something in front of you to go from. Couple of notes. The one note is that we did add that wasn't listed explicitly in some of the other policies that we looked at is that we would like to require that you have an identical item to put in your Lucky Day collection as the one that you're sharing with everyone. So no, for example, buying a combo pack, Blu-ray and DVD, and putting the Blu-ray in regular circulation and the DVD in your Lucky Day. We want to try to avoid that kind of confusion for us and our patrons. Hardcover paperback. So that's why I wrote it the way I did, cataloged on the same bibliographic record, because the jury's still out on how we're handling hardcover and paperbacks and whether we're putting them on the same bib record or not. So our thinking was if it's on the same bib record, that's your call on hardcover paperbacks. But for example, large print, regular print, not so much, because you're not going to find those on the same bib record. So if you want to buy a less expensive paperback copy to put in your Lucky Day collection, that's kind of at your discretion. Also, the feeling was most really popular books are not available in paperback right away. So you're not going to wait a year and then put the paperback in your Lucky Day because it's not going to generally be as useful to your patrons. Sometimes that'll crop up, but you know, in that case, it's just a judgment call for the library who's doing the Lucky Day collection.
And that follows state law.
And that follows state law. We have to share equally. We have to provide the same services to all of our patrons. The other thing that we added was, you know, our loan rules table is already extraordinarily complicated for Jackie. So we did not want to add different Lucky Day policies for every library that wanted to do Lucky Day because it's just too much to manage, logistically speaking. So if you want to do this, we ask that we all agree on a Lucky Day CERC policy, and those are the loan rules for those Lucky Day items. So we suggested video materials circulate for 3 days with an overdue fine of $1 per day, unless you're a fine-free library, in which case you're welcome to waive those fines. Books for a 7-day period with overdue fine of 50% per day, same thing with fine-free libraries.
Is there a reason why there is a fine thing anyways on this policy? Why it was even discussed?
Because we don't want to complicate the loan rules by allowing your Lucky Day to charge $1 a day and mine to charge $0.25 a day and someone else's charge, because then it just, every one of those things adds a loan rule for Jackie to have to manage. And this already, our loan rules table is enormous, like really enormous. So we wanted to have it standardized. I don't care what these numbers end up being, if you guys want to fight about the numbers or take them out entirely, whatever, but what we did say was it's just too much for Jackie for everyone to have their own Lucky Day loan rules. We're going to have to be in agreement on those. Does it make sense?
And if it's something that you wanted to start or take on at your library, let me know, because I do have to create the loan rules based on whatever you guys decide today. Yeah, I need to create loan rules and an I-type to go along with it.
I was interested in doing that.
I might be. I'm struggling with finding the money to do it, to buy duplicates. What was that?
We're interested in more money.
I would make a motion that we accept the Lucky Day collections policy as it's written.
I'll second that.
So a motion from Ashland, a second from Iron River. Is there any discussion online, Sherry?
Nope.
Any more discussion from anybody here? All right, let's vote. All in favor, say or type aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say or type nay.
All eyes on mine.
All right, motion carries. So if you want to do a Lucky Day collection, you have to contact Jackie because she's got to get things set up and she's going to have to show you how to catalog them so that they show up appropriately. All right, Jackie, telephone notification service. We have lots of information from Shoutbomb and ITIVA. Let's chat about it.
Yeah, I don't know, did any of you guys get a chance to listen to the example calls?
Calls and then more calls and then more calls.
I know.
I happened to do it at a time I couldn't take any of them, so I got lots of really good voicemails.
Yeah, I did too. Yeah, exactly.
It's a lot more than 10 calls.
Have you signed up more than once? Yeah, because I read in the note somewhere saying, if it doesn't work the first time, sign up again, so I kept doing it. I don't know how to make up, like, I got a lot of calls. We had lots of examples, if you didn't get a chance to listen to them, the Shoutbomb ones, and then there was one that I emailed out to you from ITIVA. So I guess, what are your thoughts? What are y'all thinking?
I think doing something is long overdue. We've been talking about this for like years and years and years. We can't keep putting it off.
One thing to think about with ITIVA is that I think they have a good reputation. I think they do really good work. They don't have texting integrated with Innovative yet. And I talked to a guy from there the other day, and he said they keep pushing for that to happen, and he's about 50% that it will. So that's something to think about, that with ITIVA, texting is not an option right at the moment with Innovative.
So we started using Sierra texting. How would that change if we pick the option that does have texting? Would we stop putting that in?
Yeah, we would add, like, where it says your preference for notices, we would add a text option there,
Would they get emails too?
whatever is chosen there.
So if you put texting, they won't get an email and text?
I don't think so. I think
Because
it's
right now
whatever.
Sierra, if you put email, they get an email and text, which is really nice.
Will you get an email too?
Yeah, because you put email and then you put the email address, comma,
Oh, if
Phone
you have
number.
both. Yeah,
Yeah.
if you have both,
or
sure.
if you put both, then they get both.
How well is that working for your patrons?
Good.
I only get my texts like once in a blue moon, it feels like.
Oh,
Yeah.
really?
I
I
think
get
it's
many
really
more
hit or
emails
miss.
than I get
It's
texts.
been working really well
Yeah.
for us, but couple like weird providers for straight talk stuff, you have to figure out their provider for them. That's why it's good to put email and text and just probably if you don't get text, let us know.
So I'm kind of a little bit confused. If we went with ITIVA, would we continue to be able to use the Sierra texting option that we're currently using?
I think so.
So we would have that texting covered in a sense.
I just think that the texting thing that we're doing right now, the option that we have to use right now in Sierra is, like, for me, really hit or miss.
Okay.
I don't think it works all the time for me personally. I
You
don't
don't
know.
have to know, for the other Shoutbomb, you don't have to know their provider or anything, you just need to know their phone number.
They have to opt in. Yeah, I think if you look at the stuff, they have to, did I send you that? I can't remember.
Yeah,
Who I sent that
I
to.
have it in my email.
Yeah.
But I don't.
Let me find it. I'll see if I can find it.
So the patron opt-in on the Merlin, just like opting in for your history thing?
I don't think it's very clear as far as, I think we should wait for
Yeah.
the answer because I don't think I can answer it.
let's see, keep talking. Oh, the other thing about ITVA is that it does require equipment. Just like the TNS right now, we have to have a server, and Tony kind of had thoughts about we would replace what we have right now. So we would need to have hardware on site. So that's another additional cost.
Hardware on site at every library. Here.
That's why Michelle put revised copies of the budget on your desk here today, and she emailed it out too, so if you didn't get it, if you're online, look in your email, because she figured the cost of that server into the ITVA budget examples. So that changed slightly from what I emailed you last week.
Was the server just like $800 or something like that?
Well, I talked to Chris Schwartz about it, because they have it down there. And the way I had it set up was just a normal PC. And he talked me out of it because it crashed. And he said it was kind of a pain to get the database back on there. So, sorry for the last second upgrade, like budget update. But I put one in there, it mirrors the drives. So if one does crash and burn, the other one takes over. So you always have you always have another disk spinning. It's not likely that they'll both crash at the same time. And we'll obviously set up a backup of the database also remotely, but they can be pretty tricky to back up. So that's why it's best to have a live running backup.
Okay, we have a request from Sue. Can Jackie please outline the ongoing costs for each? The way she's reading it, there's a larger one-time cost for Shout Bomb, but then lower annual costs.
Right, that's exactly right. So the one-time fees for licensing for Shout Bomb, for text, I think it's 3,500. I have it right now. And then-
Yeah, text software license is 3,500, and the voice for library software license is 1,500. Those are the one-time fees. And then the yearly maintenance fees are 1,700 for texting and 2,400 for voice.
Yeah.
So it is a significantly lower annual cost then.
Mhm.
And what's figured on your budget for 2020 is the first year cost. So that would be in theory going down then in the future. For ITVA, it's $6,500 annual fee, and then $800 for installation and configuring, and the cost of the server then is, how often would you probably need to replace that server?
I would say 5-6 years.
Yeah.
You push it 7.
And what was the cost on it, roughly?
1,500, I'd say.
So $1,500, so another, $1,500 every 5-ish years, so $300 a year approximately. But what am I missing? Because
So then Michelle and I did talk to the folks at Innovative, and because the telephone service right now is not being supported, we do still pay for it. Like, it's a part of our Sierra fees, so that would be removed from it. But it's $1,980 a year, so that would balance out a little bit of something.
And on this ITVA budget that you gave us today, it's showing a cost for ITVA of $9,889. So what am I missing? Because I've got 6,500 plus 800 plus 15. Oh, that is pretty close, I guess. I'm missing about $1,000.
Are there any security issues with either where they could, well, Innovative, like with Shell Phone, that they could get personal agent information at all? They just get a phone number? Will they get what they check out? Because they send it.
Yeah, so they'll, how Shout Bomb works, is they use SQL queries to pull out patron barcode. I don't think they, and then patron their preference, whether it's phone or texting. And then so some of the messages that they sent, like in the text, it might say you have an item ready for pickup. And some of the voice ones, it said like, John Smith has something at the library, and then it gave the title of the book. I don't think we would do any of those things. Like, I think it would be, this is your library calling, and you have an item for pickup, not specifying a person or what it is.
But do they get that information though? Do they still get it even if we set that we don't want it to be given out?
I think beyond barcode, I mean, I think they would pull out what we give them permission to pull out, honestly.
And are other libraries using cell phone?
There are a few. Do you want to look through the stuff that I sent out? There's a lot of information in there.
It seems like there's Wisconsin libraries that like Milwaukee County is using it.
I know Owls uses it for texting. They have something else lined up for phone. Mhm.
So did you figure out, Jackie, so as far as like data entry for staff, if we went with Shopbomb, would we re-enter all of the text information that we've already entered?
Yeah, so we would have to make another option under the preferences for email, print, phone, and then we'd have to add text there, because that's how Shopbomb would be pulling out the information. So we would have to do that.
And would we have to make sure the patron's mobile number is coded in a specific field in their record? Because like a lot of times if all people give me is their mobile number, I just put it as their main phone.
Yeah.
But there is the option to add cell
Another
phone.
phone.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
So
can
would
ask.
we have to check
Yeah,
that? Okay.
So then comparatively, the personnel time to get to ITVA, is that any better as far as re-entering data that we?
I don't think for ITVA we would have to redo anything at all. I don't think we'd have to add anything additional. They're, Tony, do you remember, were they like 2 or 3 months out? They have quite a backlog.
That I-
ITVA does.
Because they're trying to add new libraries.
It just takes time, yeah. There's, it takes some time to do whatever they need to do on their end, and then it takes us time, background setup here. It's a process. I think they said last time I talked to them 2 to 3 months out, which is why they're like, don't wait until your service crashes, because we're this far behind. The guys at Shoutbound were like, we'll have you up and running in a day. I don't know that that's true, but maybe not on our end, maybe on their end for sure. But yeah.
So we have a couple online questions. I see Patty asks if either of these companies include text messages in their quote, and the answer is yes. Shoutbomb includes texting service. ITVA is not able to do texting. So we would have to stick with our current kind of patchy solution for texting. Janelle asks, can a library opt out of this or try it and drop it and sign on later? So can libraries opt in and out of using telephone notices? The way we had been doing it with our current thing is some libraries said, yeah, we want to use it, others just don't. But I think in this, we would just not mark a patron as wanting telephone notices, right? Or how would we do it?
Then they would get emails, is that what you're saying, or?
Yeah, like our patrons don't get phone calls, Mercer patrons don't, we just use email only.
But Janelle, you'd still be paying for it in your Merlin budget.
Yeah, because we're talking about rolling the whole cost into the Merlin budget, not having specific libraries pay for it.
And if we're, an option is, I guess, if everyone likes ITVA, which is set up pretty much how we're doing things now, but wants to add texting, then we can look at adding Shoutbound texting and ITVA. They can work together.
Can each library decide which kind of notices they want to go out like we do right now?
Yeah.
It's all customizable by each library.
I would think so.
That's very, yeah.
And
Sorry.
Sue asks if
We
it's
don't do get future device, we don't do phone notices. And we don't do, reminder that you're ahead of the major soon.
Sue asks if it's possible to schedule the time that notices go out via text on Shoutbound because patrons don't like the 7:30 a.m. with Sierra right now. I agree with that. Is it possible, do you know?
I imagine that's not a question I know an answer to right now.
Okay. Probably won't get any worse though, right? I mean, like what we've got right now, I would assume is the least customizable solution. So. Unless Shoutbound starts sending them out at 4 or something.
Jackie, when you were exploring this, did you get a sense that one company was more reliable than the other as far as fail rates?
I didn't, no. they, you know, when you talk to the salespeople, they're like, here's all these great people that we're working with. I did reach out to Owls, who's using Shopbomb for texting. They seem pleased with it. They've struggled to get people to sign up to do it, like to opt in to do it. They struggled with that. I think Amanda told me she has maybe 3,000 people signed up and that they want, you know, a lot more than that. But I haven't heard about people being unhappy with it. And as far as the companies themselves, like IT is a great company, but you have to work with Innovative to do all of the setup. So that's, in my brain, not a great thing, just because of my experiences so far. Shopbomb, I mean, I don't know the guy. I mean, I met the guy at IUG, the owner. Both of the contacts at both companies have been really responsive. But again, anytime you work with Innovative as the in-between, things can get mired a little bit. So it's another thing to consider.
How long has Shopbomb been in existence?
It would be in that stuff I sent you.
I looked at it.
That's basic, it's stuff because I can't remember it all. It's been a while. Anybody remember? It was in here.
I don't remember seeing it in there.
I think it has been since 2008.
2008,
Yeah.
okay.
Oh, there you go.
Okay, so we've had a decent track record.
It's about 10.
The voice part to them is newish. They've been doing texting a long time. And another thing to consider too is that, like, if you like the texting, you can use it outside of Sierra. I mean, it doesn't have to be just for notices. Like, I think the guy from Shopbomb said some of his libraries use it to announce events coming up, stuff like that. Or, by the way, your card's about to expire. They send out messages like that.
That would be nice.
That would be nice.
I was going to ask about that too. I was wondering, and maybe I should have asked this earlier, because you won't know, but the sales guy would know, but that text for broadcast, can we do it specifically for the bond library, or is it for all of us, you know?
I don't know the answer to that. I would imagine that that if they're using SQL queries, they could do just about anything.
Yeah, when I talked this over with my staff, and we talked about that broadcast aspect, that was really nice.
I know, it's a big decision. It's a lot to think about.
If Shopbomb is the one that costs more initially, but then after that initial big cost, it's less expensive.
Well,
And it
I
does,
just want to point out that the budget amount for the 2020 budget that Michelle put together shows Shopbomb for $9,134 and ITIVA for $9,889. So it's not showing a lower first year cost.
After first year.
After first year, it
Then it
changes, yeah.
okay.
But I mean, even with the first year, ITIVA is more expensive than Shopbomb. And Shopbomb is going to drop more after the first year because we're losing both of these license one-time fees. And in the case of ITIVA, the only thing we're losing is the cost of the server, which we'll have to do again in 5 years-ish anyway.
And Shopbomb has both text and phone messages, so we
Right.
wouldn't have to like cobble stuff together.
Mhm.
So it
And
seems
we
like it
wouldn't have
makes
to work with
sense.
Innovative as much. And we wouldn't have to work with Innovative as much,
Yeah.
which we just got burned on again, to be quite honest, with this whole Content Cafe thing.
Yeah.
Their track record is not good.
It sounds like it might be a time to think about change, especially if the SQLs is just better, more current technology to get done what we need to get done.
Well, we have on the agenda later talking about Merlin strategic planning, which is that kind of thinking. So we're not doing that today, but we're asking who's interested in participating.
I think we might be leaning towards Shopbomb from the conversations around the table.
That's what I was gonna say, do we need action on this right now? Or will
We
be part
do
of the budget?
because,
We needed it yesterday.
well, I think it will be part of the budget discussion, but I think let's take action on this now, just so that it's clear what we're doing when we get to that budget part.
I would make a motion that we go with Shopbomb.
Okay, there's a motion from Ashland and a second from Spooner to go ahead with Shout Bomb for 2020. Any more discussion about it? Jackie, you were starting to say something.
For 2020, or starting immediately? Didn't we talk before about to see if they could start it earlier?
I think with Shout Bomb, they'd be happy to start with us at any moment. For right now, we'll be figuring out the money from now until the end of the year. But they seem eager to help us get started whenever. It's, is it possible to just like in the budget kind of say like, we're setting aside this $9,000 figure for phone system / test, tech system, and then if you all need more information, then we get, a representative from each of the places to come and.
We can, it's just, I feel like, I feel like, I don't know, do you guys want to do that? Do you want to bring some representatives in and talk about it? That's the sense I'm getting from everybody, that we're ready to go ahead.
Already. Thank you, Jack.
Yeah.
I think we should totally proceed with Shout Bomb, but it'd be cool to know if we can start now.
Well, then the question then is where the money comes from now, because none of us, unless you want to write a check for it this year.
Just see, maybe, what was that one a couple years ago where we asked if they could prorate or something, Sheldon Magic.
Novelist, you're right. We started in like October, and they gave us 14 months for the cost of 12-ish. And we paid after the first of the year.
$750 for the end of the year, and then we paid the full amount. And we're finally on a 12-month thing with them.
Okay.
So if Shout Bomb would start early, I probably would want to keep on like October to October, so that I could, what I would propose then is take your money out of the bank, take the money out of the bank account of Merlin to pay for them starting the work. And then when you all pay your fees in the beginning of the year, put it all back.
I was gonna say, is that okay with you for a cash flow?
That's just like an audit nightmare, but.
I hate to be in the notorious coming, but it's not that far until June. Like, if we know that we want to do this, we can get the ball rolling, and we could get it ready to go live January 1st and make it, part of the 2020 budget cycle.
I bet I could work with them. I haven't talked with their rep, but there's always net 30, net 60, like what do we need to put money up front? We've got really good credit. Just let me get to December 31st and boom, January 1, we're gonna send you a pile.
Well, if they know that we've agreed to take them on in January, but we wish they could start sooner, maybe they could give us a little perk, because they are not a new company, and they're not like, innovative rep. Maybe they would consider we'll throw in an extra month or two for just giving us a shot to see how it's going.
So online, Sue couldn't quite hear. Yes, there was a motion by Ashland and a second from Spooner to go ahead with Shout Bomb, and then I asked, was there more discussion about that motion? So that's where we are now.
So no matter what, making it in the 2020 budget, let's see if they can start it early. If it doesn't, they just give us a couple months free or whatever.
So is that keeping in spirit with your motion, Sarah? Just like we want to do Shout Bomb, the minimum we'll start it in January of 2020. We'll give Northern Water staff the ability to talk to them and see what they can sweet talk them into.
You're giving me a half extra.
For those of you online, Michelle now has her personal fan out. Okay, I think I'm gonna go ahead and call for a vote on this. So the motion was to go ahead with Shout Bomb at the costs that were presented to us, beginning at least in 2020. Hopefully we can get the ball rolling a little sooner than that. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Nay.
All eyes on mine.
All right, I'm hearing unanimous support for Shout Bomb, so let's do it. All right.
Budget.
Okay, we had a couple of small questions about Sierra settings and practices. The first was in-library use of other libraries' materials. So we had a question about when you're borrowing materials from another library, for example, using them for story hour or something like that, are you checking them out on a card? Are you marking them somehow in use? There was a question about using other libraries' materials in displays. Are you marking that? So that's where this question was, that's what this item is on the agenda. So who's doing that now, borrowing libraries from materials from other libraries?
So Story Hour has its own card.
Okay.
They borrow, they use it during Story Hour, and then the kids want to check it out, then we check it out on their card. And the Story Hour has a different patron type.
Mm-hmm.
Is that correct?
And you're using that card for placing holds on those materials when you're requesting them and then checking them out there.
I
Yeah.
have my old Hayward book club before I went to the book club HA.
Yeah.
That I use if I need something.
Mm-hmm.
And I check out.
Do you happen to know, Jackie, what that patron type is? Just for libraries who might not be familiar with it.
Would I need to change the type?
Well, I don't think it counts as a regular circulation when you use it in story hour, for example, so you need to make sure the type is coded correctly. That's why I'm asking Jackie which type we're supposed to be
Yeah, that
using.
might be under the whole.
So ours is, we do library regulates, which is probably the same we use for an library home, but if we're requesting something for some other reason, that's.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Is that the preferential, is that, you think?
I think the preference is just that you have a card that you use for that, and that you make sure that the patron type is marked correctly on it.
Anne, what is your account that you use?
It's, Hayward Book Clubs. 3 words for book club. It's not Book Clubs HA, it's.
Okay, so it's the patron stat that we're talking about? And yours says bulk loan.
Is that the right one?
Ours is, BJ Space Stories.
And it used to be that bulk loans were patron type that we would use for like a daycare center, back when Marcia wasn't counting bulk loans as circulation. So we might want to look at that because now we are counting bulk loans as circulations. But I think in-library use at story hour still doesn't count as a circulation. Am I correct in understanding the way the state defines that, Sherry?
Correct.
Yeah.
So what would be the non-circulation patron type then?
So that's a good question.
Yeah.
Why wouldn't you just leave it on hold?
I was kind of wondering that too. We don't check any of that stuff out. We just leave it as a hold status. So then if somebody else, when a patron wants it, it goes out to them. And if we still want that display happening, when it comes back to us to be on hold again. Until we're done.
So not on hold or put it on this non-circulating card, I guess is the question.
Yeah, it doesn't matter to me, as long as whatever we prefer.
And if you are using it in a program, you could always check it out to yourself. And then it could be checked out to somebody else. But so, and that would be a legitimate state considered cert because you are using it.
That's what I was.
So the difference would be whether you're actually taking the book and reading it to the children versus just having it sitting on a table as a display.
Mm-hmm.
So if it's on a table as a display, you want to just leave it on hold?
How many libraries are doing that? Using other items, other libraries' items and displays?
Just for story hour, not like in the library.
Mhm.
It's just in the story hour room, not on a library shelf. And then they get off on the level.
Apparently Sarah and I are making displays.
I have
For like
like
long
a,
time.
like upcoming soon books to movies, and so I requested different copies from other libraries so I can make the display.
I gotta be honest, I don't know that I'm comfortable with that. Only because if a movie is gonna be if a book is gonna be a movie soon, you having it on display in Ashland takes it away from my patrons, you know? So you're using my items, and I'm not accusing you, please don't take it that way.
No,
But you're using my items to boost your circulation, especially my high interest items. So I'm hesitant about that.
So does this need to be a consortium policy then, or?
I hate to write policies. You know, like, I hate to write policies if we don't have to write policies.
Yes, but I don't want to make you uncomfortable because we have a display up for an entire month and we have everybody else's books sitting along with the 10 or 11 books we have for that subject.
Right, right. I guess the other factor for me is if you have, say, an event coming up at your library, like we had a Frederick Douglass speaker, and I wanted to pull a bunch of Frederick Douglass books. Those are probably not high interest books at your library, so I wouldn't want to prevent you from doing the same if you had an event where you needed, you know, books on solar energy or who knows what. But the high interest stuff is the part that bothers me a little bit. You know, if you were borrowing my new movies or my newest things or my high interest things.
So if you guys are leaving them on the cold shelf for a month, isn't cold shelf supposed to be 2 days?
Well, they're not necessarily on the hotel for a month. I mean, generally they'll get checked out and
But they'll leave.
they'll be circulating for 3 weeks and then they'll come back.
So it'd be like a book club. where-
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I have no control over how long, because we have our display up for a month. And ideally, stuff would not sit there for a month because people would be.
Yeah,
But, you know, if this is going to be a stickler, then, you know, I'd like to know one way or the other if this is a policy that needs to be made for the because I don't want other libraries going, hey, you've been moving on to my Star Wars Last Jedi for the last 2 weeks. I want to know where it is and.
How do you use the notes on the polls? Like I think of with WisCat, you might see like, oh, this is gonna be for a book club and it's gonna be an extended time.
Mm-hmm.
Check out that to say that it's on display, so if you look and can you see it and go to contact that library and say, oh, you know,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
could we have that item back? We need it for, I don't know.
Yeah.
Using that notes part.
Yeah, the notes would maybe help if you were looking for something in particular. They don't show up when the item's on a paging list, for example, but they might be helpful, you know, for, like you said, tracking something down.
You do have the option of put on display.
There is a status
Right, the
option.
status,
There's an item
yeah.
status option is
There's
on
display.
display.
And you can't put holds on it, so that does prevent other people from requesting that item if it's on display.
Oh, so if my item went to somebody else's library, it wouldn't be able to be well, it wouldn't really anyway.
If you
It's
change that.
If you change that status, but if they're leaving it on the hold shelf status in their
you can
display, I still wouldn't be able to, I could place a hold, but
I
not.
don't think we can, like, I can't change Mercer item
You
status.
can change the status.
Yeah, it's out of my scope. I can really change it.
Okay.
I don't know, I feel like it's, you know, we are all in this to circulate our items and work consortium, and if you're not using your books and they're available to me, I should be able to borrow them for use in my community. So I feel. And you can borrow mine.
I think to a large point, it's just discretion too, you know, just like we tell our book clubs, you can't have Where the Crawdads Sing right now. You know,
Just try.
We tell our book clubs, wait until an item is 6 months or a year old, or whatever we tell our book clubs. I think if we use that same discretion on all the other uses that we have for other libraries items, then we'll probably be fine. And nobody's really noticed until now, so obviously it's not a huge issue.
The issue is back when we were being told we could count off loans and we had to be very specific about patron types because of that.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't think we've ever changed it because that was what we were told we had to do that.
So I think for now, we'll just leave things as is, and I will talk with you, Jackie, about those statuses, et cetera. And then when I send out my post-meeting memo, I'll have that clarified for everybody in that memo. So how you can do that in a reasonable way.
Certainly very helpful.
Okay.
Does anyone, for your like library cards, does anyone use the patron stat of institution/business? Anybody use that? Or was all that bulk loan
I think
thing?
it was all bulk loan.
Okay. Thanks.
Okay, cataloging procedures and standards is on this agenda because I've had several libraries tell me that Jackie is so picky. And basically say their cataloging staff doesn't feel prepared to meet the standards that Jackie wants them to meet, and they're finding it a bit overwhelming. We are doing catalog training next month. I hope that everybody has somebody going to that from their library, that your catalogers are planning to go, because it is pretty important. Because you're right, Jackie is a lot more picky than some of our previous ILS managers were. But I also don't want us all just running around saying, oh, that Jackie, and not talk about it, because the standards affect everybody's work and they affect the quality of our catalog. So it's on the agenda so we can talk about it if we want to talk about it. It's also on the agenda to remind you that you should send someone to training next month.
Yeah, I just have one library I haven't heard from, so we're in good
Okay.
shape.
Oh, good. That's excellent.
Yeah,
I'm glad to hear
Good
that.
shape.
Very good.
I hope it's not us, since we have a meeting at our library.
Yeah, you're good. You're good.
Julie.
Can I say, I appreciate the extra, or whatever it is that you're putting in, because it does make it easier when we found things, like if you're looking for something or volunteers are looking for something, it's nice to be able to just call and get it fixed right away, and it makes everything easier and it's not as complicated. Besides them trying to pick a record out of 5 that should be 2.
Yeah.
So I appreciate it.
With putting books in, just being busy all day, I know that you have sent different videos on procedures in Sierra. Have you, or do you have like a outline on like the beginning steps to more difficult entries in there? A training manual?
So a lot of this stuff is on the Northern Writers website, and it's, as I always say about the website, it's always a work in progress. I think after the training in September, I think we'll have a better idea of where everybody is. And what I have been telling everybody when I've been out for cataloging visits is that this is our cheapest option right now. Like, my standards are not gonna go down. My standards are staying where they are, because I have to look at the big picture of what services are we offering to our patrons? What direction are we going as a system? So I'm not lowering my standards. What we're coming to realize is that if this is what our catalogers were really meant to do all along, and we're just not given the tools, well, now they're given the tools, and now we have to give it some time, and then in 6 months, maybe have the discussion of, okay, Jackie, we honest to goodness don't physically have the time to do the things you're asking us to do. And then we see what that looks like from there. Like, it doesn't hurt my feelings. I know I've thrown a lot at every cataloger in the system. It's not easy to do the things that they're being asked to do, particularly when they're working at Circ Desk at the same time and managing programs and patrons. It's a big task. I guess from my perspective, like I said, this is the cheap option. I explain what I'm looking for. I give you the tools. I give you the training, and Anne Marie the same. And then we see what happens. And then, you know, after a discussion, after some time, we have some options. I don't know what they all look like, but we just have a discussion and see what happens. So I do understand the frustration. I absolutely understand it. And I guess I'm not going to apologize for it, because it is what it is. But yeah, like Teresa said, we need to talk about it.
And I will remind everybody that Mike Sheehan had been talking for years about centralized cataloging. I don't know that he was ever very good at explaining the underlying reasons why he felt it was important, but you know, he wasn't just letting things slide because he didn't know how to address it or didn't want to address it. He was in the same boat that Jackie is, where we have a lot of part-time staff, we have a lot of staff who have many, many hats at their libraries. We're trying to squeeze in cataloging when they can, et cetera. So it's not something that's totally new to us. It's just that it's a lot more visible now because Jackie's new and she's running around to all our libraries and giving us lots of good training, options and formats and so on. So this is not the first time we've talked about it. It's just, I think becoming more clear.
And it looks a little different because maybe our predecessor we're taking a break.
We want to get everybody back online.
Okay, can everybody hear us again?
I can hear you now. This is Josh.
Thanks, Josh. All right, we're back.
Josh, what did you do?
We had some technical difficulties, guys, so we actually paused our discussion while we lost you, so now we're back. So we were just talking about the catalog training dates are September 10th, 11th, and 12th. Is that what you
The
just said?
10th, the 17th, and the 24th.
Oh, sorry.
What?
11th,
Wait,
17th, and
Wait,
24th.
wait, the 11th?
Yes, it's the 11th in Mercer.
11th in Mercer, yeah, sorry.
Sorry, I thought they were all the same week or something.
And Julie had just asked about other systems and how they handle cataloging. So Wisconsin Valley does have a system cataloger, and many of their catalogers in the system, for example, are not allowed to like do remote searches. They're not allowed to add bib records like that. They can add a short record and then the system cataloger takes it from there. IFLS does something very similar called cataloging and bibliographic services. So you, in their case, you send or email your orders to the system cataloger, and she does all the cataloging from there. She doesn't ever touch a book for you, just does it all from a distance. Probably similar to Wisconsin Valley, but yes, other systems do similar things, you know, in more ways.
So then, like, if you have a cataloger at your library, what would their role be then if that were to happen?
Because of the process the books are.
So process and add the items, yes, because a system cataloger wouldn't necessarily be touching items physically. So you would have to still process them, stamp them, and add the item to the bib record in Sierra.
Sue says, thank you, Jackie. High standards are important.
Jackie's discussion gonna come up at the catalog training. You had mentioned about doing ILL different.
Yeah.
And what we're doing it now.
I think that's our on pause discussion.
Later.
Yep.
Thank you, Jackie, you have helped us out so much.
Going forward, and we went through the cataloging and setting, correcting the bid record and everything like that. Do you think there'll ever be a program that'll do that automatically for?
Not without a lot of money.
Not without a lot of money, and my experience with kind of pre-canned records like that is they're not great quality. That's my experience. It's not anything I'd want in our database to have available for our patrons to look at, no.
Okay, anything else?
I don't know. I don't know. What are your concerns? What are your feelings? Like, I really do feel for the catalogers. I've thrown a lot at them, I know.
Thank you for updating you a lot there. When we need you, when we can call you, how we miss it.
My question would be, would we use it as often so we don't have to call you to walk us through it again when we're correcting a bid record?
I guess right now I'd rather that you call. Like, I feel like everybody's still kind of learning as we go, kind of what it is that we're all looking for, like Anne Marie and I are looking for in the record. So I would much rather that you ask the question.
When you and Anne Marie are centralizing this stuff, what are you basing that on? Is it like the whole United States, the whole world?
It's really just the systems around us and her training and my training as catalogers. Well, just what we know.
With international standards. RDA is international.
Okay.
And I'd like to remind everybody that the quality of our records also impacts WISCAT because they get matched. And if our records are not good during that matching process, our items are not going to be requested or easily found by other patrons. So it's not just in our system. This has a statewide impact.
And of course, the thinking is long-term as well. So, the talk in the state is about statewide discovery layer. It's about combining systems. And all of those things are much more complicated if we don't have a quality database to start from. It's really hard to match. It would be really hard to match what we have now to almost any other system around us because we have some wacky stuff going on right now. So.
And this is a little soapboxy, and I don't mean to be soapboxy, but some of what I've heard from around the system in the, sitting side by side with catalogers is, but I don't have that item in my building. So it doesn't affect me. It really does. All of our patrons are all of our patrons. Like, so your Land O'Lakes patron can order something from Hayward. Absolutely it affects you. Absolutely it affects your patrons. Anything that you can search in our catalog affects all of your patrons. Anything that's not in the catalog because it wasn't cataloged well affects your patron. We're all on the same team, whether we want it or not.
Gosh darn it, you're gonna like it and you're gonna eat your pizza.
Okay, I'm done off the soapbox.
Okay, so I'm gonna let that go for now. I think we had some good discussion about it, and I hope everybody comes to catalog training. And it's good to hear that almost everybody's signed up, so that's excellent. All right, Novelist Plus. So Novelist is something we paid for with grant money. Yes, I'm looking at Sherry. How did we pay for it before?
No, last year we had the discussion because or 2 years ago, the discussion was because the state got rid of the tech grant with LST money that paid for Ancestry and Novelist and that bunch of things. That went away. The Merlin Consortium got to decide what were you willing to pay for, and Ancestry wasn't something everybody was willing to pay for. So everybody agreed that they would keep Novelist, and the consortium pays for that.
Okay.
Ancestry got paid for by our extra benevolence of the state legislature.
Okay, so thank you for clarifying that. I had that wrong in my head. According to the budget that Michelle gave us, the base budget plus Novelist, there's a Novelist cost of $4,724. which is an increase of $224 over 2019. So we have to just decide whether or not we want to keep paying that cost and keep Novelist in our system. So if you don't remember, Novelist shows up at the bottom of the homepage on Merlin as a link for us and our patrons to use. Although if you use it from home and you're on an IP address that may or may not look like it's from Wisconsin, you still have to log into it with a library card. At least that's my personal experience at home. But when you're in the library, it works. And it also provides read-alikes at the bottoms of our Merlin catalog pages and things like that. So.
One other correction is that Anne Marie, she's at new director boot camp training. That's why she isn't here today. We did get a brand new quote for Novelist, and it did increase more than what is on your spreadsheet. Instead of the 4,724 is 5,208.
5,208, which is an increase of $700 over 2019.
Sorry.
It's okay.
Now, that's Novelist Plus or Novelist in general?
That is our Novelist Plus Select that's integrated with our catalog.
Right, so regular Novelist is available through Badger Link.
Right.
So patrons can always use it, and we as library staff can always use it just as Novelist if you want to look up a fiction series or whatever. But to integrate it into our catalog is the plus part.
Question, are we still gonna be getting Ancestry for 2020?
For 2020, yes, but we're gonna discuss all of that later and in future meetings leading up to next year, because now we don't have any restrictions on what we can use that money for, so it changes conversations.
Who gets the money when we pay for Novelist?
EBSCO. No, it is not innovative.
Any questions coming up online about this year?
Not yet.
Okay. So what do we want to do, guys? You like it?
I like it.
Is there any analytics that we have that show?
No, that's a great story, and Anne Marie would be beating your head on the wall. So last year when we talked about it, we were getting analytics, and then there was a change in the way that they count things and the way that we have access to them. So now we don't have analytics anymore.
And we're not going to get any anymore?
It is an ongoing conversation with their tech department about how to get all of the stats that we used to get, because it was heavily clicked on. I mean, we're talking, I think like 25,000, 30,000 clicks a year through our catalog. So it was heavily used. And then we went to 0 when they changed whatever parameters. But we've had many exciting conversations in the hallways trying to deal with EBSCO and how to get statistics again. So to be continued.
You want to turn your like into a motion?
I need a motion.
Well, it's the whole Novelist, the whole slate of things.
Motion from Land O'Lakes, is there a second?
I'm sorry, I missed exactly what the motion is. I didn't.
To go ahead and renew Novelist
Okay.
at the cost of $5,200. A second from Sainer. Any other discussion about it?
Sue, did you hear the motion again? It is to continue with Novelist for 2020. And it's been moved and seconded.
Any questions coming in online about it? All right, all in favor? Aye. All opposed? Nay?
All ayes on it.
Motion carries. Okay, so that brings us to the consortium budget, which has been considerably narrowed down because we've decided to go ahead with Novelist and we've decided to go ahead with Shoutbomb. So if anything doesn't say Novelist or says ITVA, you can throw it away. You want the one that says Novelist and Shoutbomb. That's basically what we're looking at.
No TV.
I don't see a novelist from Shoppa.
Yeah, I don't see
Good
that.
one.
There was one emailed to you. I don't think it was on the table today though, because it hadn't changed.
Now I have it opened, it wasn't there before. So,
I might have an extra one.
So this would have.
There we go.
novelist number though.
yeah, it's still the wrong novelist number.
Right, so it is still slightly out of date, because the novelist cost is 5208 according to our new quote.
What is the wish of the group? Do we want
$500.
printouts and a new? Okay,
Apparently I can't hijack this.
no.
All right, so for those of you online, Michelle is running to her desk to make that correction. Don't really run, Michelle, I was kidding. And she's gonna give us an updated version of this spreadsheet, but it's only gonna change by $500 overall, so it's not gonna make a huge impact in your individual numbers. So, yeah, as you remember, this is basically, the way we calculate this is a per site cost, and then the remainder of the cost is based on your circulation and your collection size as a percentage of the whole consortium. So on the very last column of the spreadsheet is what you paid this year, 2019, and the second column in from the right is what you will pay in 2020, approximately, but Michelle's gonna bring us some revised numbers in a minute here. Anybody have any questions or discussion about this as it was given to us?
Do we have another couple of seconds? So I can look back?
Yeah, we do, because we're probably on hold now until Michelle comes back. So take your time.
Okay.
Yeah, the one we're looking says 2020 Merlin costs base budget plus novelist and shout bomb.
Yeah, how come you?
See, remember I told you that I noticed
Something's
you guys, I know.
Yeah, Eagle River too. Eagle River has a significant increase this year. I don't know if it's a CERC number or something like that.
Oh, I can't believe it's a certain number, that's good for them, right?
In theory.
But I see, I was only up to 200. No, yours is up like, wow.
Holy cow, 1180 and.
That's not you. Yours is 12,046. You're looking at the Merlin base.
Oh,
Get rid of that.
yeah, I saw. Oh, yeah, so it's 1200-ish.
I guess it's not much different.
And yours is how much? 1200.
That's
Yeah,
all right.
They're just talking about, hey, I'm so tired of money.
That doesn't always calculate it, you're right.
No,
I mean, just because you have more circles, you get more money.
no, those are two.
No, it's saying it's both by
Well, a little bit.
Yeah, but it's to say it's, we're slightly larger to election, you're slightly larger. Or at least 97. We have a bigger collection. Wait, hold on, I'm gonna say. Right. Collection 42.
And you're 39 or 36. But then if you look at the population base.
This one is.
Oh, I know, I'm just saying. For circulation.
What's the search difference?
Right, let's see how much it increases.
You're versatile.
Well, just almost two, it's just over that. And then we're.
They want it printed We will have to do this again. All right, do you guys just want it on the screen or do you want handouts for people in person?
Handouts.
There you go, Michelle. We're almost there.
You're getting your steps in, Michelle. See, just think of that.
Yeah. I'll say it backward.
Okay, when Michelle hands out everything, Teresa, Sue wants to make a motion to adopt the 2020 budget.
Okay. Good to know.
Sometimes I'm not on.
Yeah. Very excited. Yeah. Oh.
She only uses one, but for Bisbee, all three are on up front. And then Betty's on us. And then
Right here.
And most of
Branch
them.
off to the library.
And then my teacher's right
Everything.
my cheeks comes
Yeah.
And I have to say, I'm usually my old once I got out of that, it was like, wow, I can't go our process.
We can blame this on Anne Marie because she's not here and she sent in that late quote that.
Yeah. If you're not here, you get to work or.
And so you get paid and then you get assigned a job.
Yes.
Volunteer for it.
Now what we're gonna run into is. We only
The other one I want is you guys sign.
I don't have that. Thank you, Michelle. So, okay, everybody, Michelle is passing out a revised spreadsheet for you. And we do have a motion from Sue in Superior to adopt the 2020 Merlin cost-based budget plus novelist and shout bomb. So I'd like to have a second for that motion before we continue discussion. Spooner shouted it first, so motion by Superior, second by Spooner. All right. So as those copies make their way around the room, if anybody has any questions about them, please speak up.
Jenny?
Want to take, oh, sorry, I didn't push it on. That's right.
Thank you. Is this one
Was it
the
same one?
or is the same thing?
No, it's not the same.
Yep.
So here you went up.
Okay, so revised, this thing includes a total budget of $199,467. And you can see that the costs are broken down there for you. Oh, I'm sorry, you're right, I read the wrong number. 211,478, which represents the increase from Shout Bomb of 9,134 and Novelist for 5,208. Now, didn't you mention that there are some ongoing costs with the phone system we're using now that may then come back out of this?
Yeah, it was around close to $2,000 for TNS.
Okay, so this may then go down, but no, we're not gonna ask Michelle to run back to her office and figure that again. Because I think for budget planning purposes for all of our libraries, a bigger number that might go down is much better than a smaller number that might go up, so.
All wrong.
So, any more discussion about this budget or questions about it?
Here's a request for Michelle to email this out after the meeting, not immediately.
Okay. Yeah, sure.
All right, well, since I'm not hearing any more questions or discussion, and we do have a motion and a second on the floor, I will call the question here. And all in favor, aye?
Aye.
And opposed, nay?
All eyes.
All right, we have a 2020 budget.
I'm sorry, I missed who made the original.
It was a motion from Superior Online and a second from Spooner. Yep. Okay, Overdrive Advantage Collection budget. We emailed this as well. But I do have a question about it because I'm not clear on 5.8% increase. The increase here is a lot more than 5% of 18,000. It's almost 30%. So I'm confused. Did we intend to do 5% or did we intend to do an increase of a dollar number, or what was the plan there?
Emery's not here to talk about that. I asked her to look at the total population, and the total use, and she entered those numbers. And then we had formulas in for 18,000, half and half.
I'm sorry, I didn't look at this closely enough when it was emailed because I should have caught that, because this is like a 30% increase, not a 5% increase. So 18,000 times 1.058 it would be a total of $19,044 for a 5% increase.
Yes. And I didn't double check that either. What are the implications if we have to vote on this in the next meeting?
Once again, we could just use these numbers for our library's budget planning and think that they may be going down and then approve it again in November with a revised figure. I mean, I guess from my perspective, I'd rather have a high number to budget and then bring it down. But we can talk about it now, what we want to do. Was the 5.8% something we talked about in the past as an increase level, or I don't know where that number came from.
This was a spreadsheet that came to my desk when we didn't have an assistant director in a different year. And I just entered population use and then made sure that formulas carried through. I honestly don't understand Advantage at all.
Did we talk about maybe that dollar amount, the 5,400?
I think that was from previous years. Yeah, I don't think the 5.8 matches the 5,400.
No, it doesn't. 5.8 is like 30% of 18,000. So
Maybe did we at one point say 5,400?
I don't know.
Because the 23,400 seems like a very known figure to me when looking at Overdrive. I feel like that's been our number at least last year.
Without being able to access the drive, I can't see what formulas are driving this. Oh, I'm gonna spend lunch in my office. And I'm certainly happy to do that, I'm not sure.
I mean, I think the way we calculate this is we decided at some point that we wanted to do $18,000 into this Advantage collection. We decided the most equitable way of sharing it was based on the size of our populations and the usage that our patrons were making of that digital system. So we had set up that formula just as splitting that cost in that way. But my question is just how much, why we have this level of increase for this year. Not that I think it's necessarily a bad thing. I just want to make sure we're all clear on what it is and why.
Yeah, that 5.8 was in last year and previous years.
So we had been increasing 5.8. So maybe this 5.8 represents an increase of, maybe this dollar figure represents an increase of 5.8% each year for multiple years. And that's how we've arrived at this figure. I don't know. Well, I guess the question is, how does the group want to proceed? So we have this spreadsheet that tells us what it would cost each of our libraries if we had $23,400 in our Advantage collection. Do we want to spend that much? Do we want to bring this back in November? Or do we want to spend more? Who wants to go crazy?
I'm in favor of spending more.
More than 23,400 or?
Never enough. I'm fine with 23,400, however we choose that.
We certainly can approve this as is, even if we don't know how we got there. It's totally fine. Totally fine.
Smells like approval, women.
Do you have any comments on mine, Sherry?
No comments yet.
Well, if there's no other discussion, Sherry, do you want to turn that into a motion?
I make a motion, we spend $23,400 in 2020 in our Advantage account.
Okay. Motion from Sherry, motion from Boulder Junction, second from Spooner. Any further discussion about it? All right, all in favor? Aye. Opposed, nay?
No.
All eyes on mine.
All right, motion carries. All right, Merlin strategic planning, no, Merlin compliance document. Sorry, I'm skipping an item. We're not going to discuss this in great detail today. This is something that we should be doing every year. We last did it in 2017, so we did skip last year. We are going to need to update this with the new Lucky Day policy, and there are some other things that Jackie noticed in there under cataloging standards that need to be updated as well. So I think we're not really even going to need to talk about it much today. Jackie and I will work on this, or maybe Anne Marie and I don't know whose role this is, but at any rate, we will work on this and bring it back to the November meeting and have you guys sign a new copy for 2020, as the usual thing. But if anybody had anything they wanted to bring up about this, I had emailed it to you in advance, so you'd have it and you could look through it and see if there was anything you noticed on it. Anybody online have any comments about it?
Just about the last one. No.
Oh, sorry.
I don't know what that is. Okay. No, not yet.
Okay. All right. Well, then we're just gonna set that aside until November, so you'll see a revised copy coming at you in November. And there was a little confusion because Sherry's 2017 copies that were signed were dated May. This one's dated August. I don't know that there were actually any updates made in that time. We'll look at it at any rate. Merlin strategic planning is on the agenda, not because we really need to have a detailed discussion of it, but because Jackie and I have briefly talked, and I know Jackie's talked with others, probably you, Sherry, about the need for Merlin long-range planning. We had sort of tentatively started this a couple years ago when we did some goals planning or some discussion of goals and objectives and things like that, but we never really followed through on an actual long-range plan. And we need to make some decisions because, as Jackie pointed out, we spend a lot of dollars patching things up or finding the cheapest solution for something instead of really comprehensively thinking about where we want this system to go and how we want it to move forward in the future. So I don't know, Jackie, do you have anything specific you want to get out of today with this? Or?
No, just that that's what I'm starting to think of, and then I would like participation in I suppose, a committee that will start meeting regularly and come up with some ideas and direction and recommendations.
And I'd like to really see this get going. I think in the short term, there's going to be opportunities maybe for us to maybe merge ILSs and maybe have our costs lowered and have extra features we can't pay for. And so I think the consortium really needs to be thinking about, well, where do you want to go? What do you want? And take advantage of opportunities that may arise. Sue has a comment too.
Yeah. Sherry and Jackie, the places you go for library business, and the directions that you have suggested. In the committee that's part of this Is there plans to stay, like on a national level and up to date on digital stuff and everything like that?
Everything we do is under that direction. I'm heavily involved in ALA, and so I try to impart my dealings in ALA and where things are going with the staff here. But I'd like for us to be a top-notch system, and we're already well on our way to becoming that, especially within our state with the new collaborations we've done with the Lean Partnership. That's leading the state in technology really right now, us in South Central. So we're well on our way. But
Yeah, and Sherry, you're really active in SIRLAW, which connects you to all the systems in the state and helps us stay on top of what is happening. But I think in terms of our patron-facing services, we're behind the systems that are around us, in my honest opinion. And that's nobody's fault. I'm not pointing fingers at anybody, but we've not kept pace with some of the things that they can afford to do that we don't have the funding for. So I think that's one of the biggest reasons it's really important for us to, like Sherry said, keep our ears open for these potentials. Because there are ways for us to be spending less money and offering more to our patrons than we're doing now. But it's going to involve some creative thinking and some collaboration, especially since it doesn't look like a lot more dollars are coming down the line anytime soon. So unless your libraries are wealthy and you want to share.
we'll talk.
Sue had mentioned that. Sue, are you there?
Yeah, thanks. I'm a huge fan of strategic planning. In fact, we're starting today here in Superior to do our strategic planning for a 5-year plan. I was involved with the last strategic planning process for Merlin, and I just have one request, or my hope is that we would be open to having an outside consultant help us do this. I know we got really buried down in the weeds the last time we tried to do strategic planning. Then Sherry had a consultant come and kind of help us work through some ideas. But I'm a big fan of having some outside help, and it's not necessarily doesn't come free. So that's just something to think about. We're having Wills is doing our strategic planning consulting, but I know there's lots of people out there who could do a great job. That's it.
Thanks, Sue. Thank you, Sue. Any other comments or questions about this?
Can I get a list of the names emailed to me who's on the committee?
That's what we're trying to decide, like who would be interested in doing so. I can send out an email later and see who really responds. I don't want to put you all on the spot. Actually, I do. I'm going to walk around one by one.
All right, that sounds good. I think you're just following up by email is probably the best way. All right, good. That brings us to the end of our agenda. Next Merlin meeting is November 14th at 10 a.m. It'll do the usual thing, be here in person or online. So I think we will go ahead and adjourn, and it is 12 o'clock on the dot.